So I mentioned yesterday, good morning. I mentioned yesterday that I'd like to get into the territory of defining the word art, which is probably a good idea, as opposed to digital images of art. I wouldn't be the first to try and do this, and of course, anything I say is an ad hoc sketch on the moment with barely half a cup of tea in me. So, like other three-letter words, art, God, sex, it's completely from the person's point of view. It's only a point of view. And that's probably one of the beauties of art and God anyway, that there is a freedom of definition depending on the individual, which means that the subject of inquiry around the word and the meaning of the word is still relatively personal and free. One of the important things about art, one would imagine, although you can get a lot of pre-stretched canvases now quite readily, all made for your art, straight from the factory. In my understanding, the artifact, the art was about transformation, a dynamic, a life principle even, but a conscious transformation in alchemical terms. Something about ignorance to wisdom, something about lead to gold, something about hatred to gratitude and love, something about sickness to health, something about higher intelligence of another aspect of ourselves, a marriage with aspects of our higher selves, perhaps. But I'm not talking about brushes and oil paint, am I now? No. He's wafted into psychotherapy and spirituality again. Human beings used to sing and dance art together. That's where it comes from. A friend of mine was doing some research recently and came across some information in a book about the theorized structure of the human vocal cords. The evolutionary biology, I suppose. Apparently, the human vocal cords have been structured in their range of timbres and tones and whatnot through group singing. Through singing, we used to sing language. We used to sing the mountains. We used to sing the sky, and we used to sing each other. So I can imagine that would have also been an emotional function. So as far as I know, in ancient Aboriginal culture, the petroglyphs on the walls there were placeholders. They were logos. They were bookmarks for a collective story. and the story was both sung and danced simultaneously by a group, by a tribe, by a family, by the elders, whoever. I don't know. I wasn't there. And I find that definition of art pretty interesting, because again, you're getting into an altered state of consciousness. You're getting into mythology. You know, the stories they would be singing would be myth stories, would be stories of the gods, you know, protection stories, to the rains, whatever. But these things, you know, you're talking about art being kind of incantatory sigils, spells, if you like, to a broader set of human endeavours. And, you know, it still is. It still is. I mean, why do people like Banksy, right? You know, Banksy represents what? You know, all of that. So there's a kind of collectivism tied up in art. But, you know, beautifully enough, each heart, each soul, each mind, every ego that engages in art is still in the universal. You know, like our content is all still fairly similar. You know, bags of hormones, needs, desires. So, you know, in that way, it's always a collective story. Yes, there is privacy. We don't have to politicize ourselves, but everything is political. You know, a type like you is part of a broader demographic that represents a certain whatever. But above that, you know, there are forces that, you know, we are reacting with unconsciously. So again, you know, what is art? Let's bring it back to the premise, Robinson. If we take the Aboriginal example of images, symbols, representations of deities, characters from myth, if we take that as a sort of shamanic entry point to the unconscious of a group experience, it makes sense that, you know, further art was about childbirth, crops, you know, the gods, war, fertility, both in men and women, ichthyophallic. I saw a lot of erections in Egypt on their art, and this is pertinent fertility. A lot of big-hipped women in, you know, prehistory. So, yeah, I mean, that's my go-to for what is art. But beyond the created artifact, beyond the cultural signifier outside of the dream, you know, there's the 2 a.m. dream. There's the personal, perpetual hallucination of our own realities that swim in and out of our concerns and projections and troubles and emotions and dreams and fatigues and bodies. And, you know, I mean, this in itself is you know, you couldn't get a simulation as wonderful as what you're experiencing as you. Even though what you're experiencing as you is constantly a changing and impermanent effect, all the way to death. It doesn't mean that it's not art. So, I mean, in that way, art is a shapeshifter as well. There is no fixed image. I mean, that's one of the other reasons why I have a kind of reaction to the idea of propagating images, because actually, you know, as a process artist, you know, I'm engaged in a liquid and a movement sort of interaction of causes and impulses and thoughts and conversations internally and externally, because there's, you know, often music or lectures going on at the same time. So I'm being cross-stimulated. It's like a biopsy of the whole world as far as I'm concerned. when I'm working well, and it can be wonderful. It can be absolutely wonderful. For me, it's not necessarily about control. It's about dancing with a set of probabilities that may or may not come into existence, depending on the connection between my hand and brain. I find the sort of field of what is imminent in potential and what actually becomes quite interesting, because I'm aware of squillions more than what actually gets able to be produced within the narrow funnel of the now. So a lot of my dangly work, the way they're clustered together in a compression, is a little bit like a compression of time. Terence McKenna said the other day in a lecture, the compression of time, otherwise known as human history. So, in this instance, in this sort of hyperspace of, post-human cyber, post-human cyber archaeology, art that sort of deals with, just like the shamanic image on the cave wall, art that deals with the fractal multiplicity of attentions and the non-human, as well, the non-human. And, I'm going to include the spiritual in the non-human. It's not just so-called, machine intelligence, which, is a puppet intelligent, I know the users of puppets have all sorts of strange magical things happen to them when they're using puppets, ventriloquists and alter egos and spooky identities talking through them when they're putting on the mask or putting the hand up the Chucky doll. That's kind of a weird thing, isn't it, people? Yeah, again, that's art too, right? There are alter egos, there are roles we enact, and there are reasons for those roles. And, in a increasingly demasculinated New Zealand, and a very saturated feminine art environment, equality means being half-assed moderate for compliance in retail, basically. Like only be as good as the weakest gallerist will feel comfortable allowing you to be you. It's I don't think that's art. That's communist compromise for mediocrity. And that's pretty much all you get to do in New Zealand. It's not really about your work or, yeah. So, I mean, I'm not so sure if this sort of compliance is in Maoridom as well. I know men are somewhat sacred in Maori, but women seem to be able to access all genders as much as they want and fuck everything up. De-engineer the whole thing, and now we need AI to fix it all because we can't do it. Well, yeah. All I'm going to say is female magic and male magic. Yeah. So, yeah, I think we asked a mechanic once, you haven't got any girls in here, I'm sure you have to have some girls these days. And it's like, yeah, they don't like getting dirty, they don't like hard work, and they don't like turning bolts with fucking wrenches very much because they're weak. And they also don't like getting things wrong, so I mean, it's like, risk and bravery and heroism and is actually a necessary thing for a tribe to turn over the cultural soil, you know, and those things can be for both genders, but women turning into men and men turning into women, bullshit, you know, utter bullshit, you know. I'll wear a pastel shirt. I don't mind some flowers on my fucking altar over there, you know. Like, I think you can be a gentleman, but it's, I don't think a bunch of dykes running Creative New Zealand and you know, most galleries in New Zealand is actually proportional cultural representation. You know, like, yeah. So okay, so we've segued into James's favourite topic again. You know, just because my father was a cancelled man, you know, a cripple with mental illness issues, you know, so I come from a line. Oh, yeah, and then my grandfather also died of skin disease in bed working for the railways, right? So, you know, I come from a line of kind of decommissioned fucked men, and it's like, get fucked, you know? Like, I'm all right, you know? Like, you know? Except you can't be all right here, you know? You can't be all right. Well, maybe I can be all right. I'm all right. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm not raging at women. I'm raging at the inequity of not having any hope in order to sort of be who you're supposed to be. You know, you're only supposed to be a corporate Maori. You know, you're only supposed to aspire to be like Shane Cotton or something. You know, everyone else is a mock. You know, every white male you'll see is some kind of mock tokenist, virtue signaling, PC, wet, upper middle class, ex-lawyer, woofter. You know, shove tampons up your ass, bitches. Whew. Don't know about this rant. Don't know. I mean, should I upload this or not? I mean, what do I want my art to be about? It's not about that. My art's not about that. I mean, that's. I want it to be the mystery. Well, it is the mystery. It is beauty. You know. It is the child and parent. It is the other. Spiritually, you know. We live in a horrible, broken family structure where pretty much no one's happy. Women and men aren't happy. I personally think this is slightly by design, so our owners get to divide and conquer us. Maybe art's about healing. Maybe the big grief and pain I have as a New Zealand artist is always around the need for the family to be healed, to want a sense of animal belonging, a sense of tribe. All I've ever strived for is, well, I like that exhibitions bring people together. It looks like it's about me, but often it's not. It's about the spirit that I'm working with, which is often the grief and rage that I speak of. Not only, you know, it's the intimate human through, you know, through a depression complex. Yeah, you know, the initiation, the underworld. But we are more than the trouble. We always were. The trouble might be necessary on some karmic, spiritual level. Perhaps it's the great teacher as well, the trouble. I mean, I would dearly wish for the trouble to leave me in my life. It would be wonderful. I can't see the trouble disappearing externally in my culture. So we're still trying to define art here. mean, I find oil stains on the road quite interesting, you know. It is about technologies of perception at this stage and understanding, which is about consciousness and intelligence. But it can just be an intuitive feeling, you know. It can be a sexy feeling. It can be a sad feeling. It can be a boring feeling. You can pick your genre of art styles, you know, postmodern photography, blah, 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 blah. I find it quite interesting to sort of reinvent some kind of painting language myself. Cobbling things together at the moment, you know, seems to be what I enjoy doing. And I think the effects are really arresting. And I'm really interested in the juxtapositions of sort of collage elements and 3D elements and, you know, the feral, you know, ancient future of it all. That's, yeah, so post-humanism, really, you know, like the anthropology of you know, this human soul in the face of the internet, the big net, you know, Ahriman, you know, like Steiner talked about this synthetic demon kind of encasing the world in a neural sheath of, and then sort of putting lots of, you know, negative energies inside a sort of neural framework to possess humans. Pretty plausible spiritual myth, you know, demonology. You know, I mean, guys rape themselves 14 times a day to synthetic demons. Throwing their Shakti away. Psychic power. Yeah, so, oh well, it's a 22 minute. Well, let's stop at then, because that's